Oh, I put the same title, but of course I changed the the content. So let's start. Just a moment. Well, when we talk about STEM and STEAM, I'm just going to start of about the big picture. Brazil is taking part of several studies of OECD, and in this case, it's very good that we take part, because sometimes in our country, when we change government, they stop doing measurements the way they did in the previous government and so on. So it's very good that we are taking part of international studies and international evaluations in different subjects, not only related to education, as also related to economy and so on, trying to understand what's the big picture of Brazil compared to other countries. And I think pressured by these studies in the last 20 years, many things have been done in Brazil trying to improve education. Brazil has improved, especially in the offering of schooling for everybody. We did not reach 100% yet in different levels of education, but we improved a lot. But we are still very, very in bad position. In 79 countries, we are among the worst, the worst. So it reveals that we have highest levels of inequalities. Also, we have a big movement right now from the industry in Brazil, because the competitiveness is very bad. We are in a very bad shape in terms of competitivity internationally, and also for the Brazilian market. So they are really concerned about basic education right now, and also about engineering education. So there is a very big movement. They are with a new sector in the National Confederation of Industry. They have a movement called Business Mobilization for Innovation. So they are really concerned about innovation. And inside this group, they have different work groups. One work group is working specifically in engineering education. And they have pressured the Minister of Education to change the guidelines for education. It's not very good right now, but improved a lot. They put more focus on the skills and competences. But the problem is sometimes the guidelines are nice, but the implementation is a big issue. And now, right now, they have also a work group focused on basic education, and this work group is called STEAM education, because they are worried about how can we develop the skills for the 21st century, and how can we work more integrated with all the disciplines, more integrated, focus on real world problems and so on. So they want to induce the establishment of better public policies, and also to induce very good implementation and evaluation tools. That's the main object of this work group, but they are just starting right now. And also they are focused on as we have a new BNCC, the national curricula. It's quite new, it was approved in 2018. So they want to put pressure and also to give some support for the government to try to have a better implementation of this, taking the opportunity of this new curriculum guidelines to do better implementation, taking care of the skills of the 21st century. Also in Brazil, as you know, we have several non-governmental organizations right now, and it's really important for advocacy, and also to implement pilots and to implement very good evaluation, because to do large scale, as we are changing the Minister of Education, we are always changing the secretaries and so on. So we need other partners to assure that this kind of process can have continuation, and that we could have good data to compare one implementation with others. Of course, we also have scientific publications, but usually the publications that we have, they are not concerned about large scale. Usually they are PhDs that are doing analytic work and so on. But large scale, usually we have research that is developed by OECD or non-governmental organizations. Well, as you also know, the BNCC, the new common base that we have in Brazil, it say that we have general competences that should assure the essential learning for each student. And this is important because it's focused on competences. So knowledge, scientific, critical and creative thinking, cultural repertoire, digital culture. So it's one of the competence that is here. Communication, work and life protect, argumentation, self-knowledge, self-care, empathy, cooperation, responsibility, citizenship. And also they have the cross-cutting BNCC teams. So this is very connected with the idea of STEAM and education. And it's at the same time, it's a challenge because we have the new curriculum right now, and it's an opportunity because we are right now in the situation of implementation and evaluation of the first implementations, both in public and private schools. What is our vision when we talk about STEM and STEAM, and why we put the A here, the art in the STEM? Because we are from an engineering school, we are working very hard developing technologies to work inside schools with electronics, with computers and computing stuff. But the A is really important, and I'm going to explain to you why. Well, when we talk about this, we are not concerned with just, let's do something instructional where we are going to develop a specific technology. Here is the spirit to work with the interdisciplinary approach with the observation and characterization of real world questions and problems, using the strategy of investigation and critical thinking, working with project-based learning. And when we talk about projects here, we are really concerned about projects, the scientific and technological research projects. How can we do this inside the basic school? Another thing that we stimulate to use when we develop projects, especially when we are develop technological research projects, how can we combine design thinking? How can we, to understand the problems, how can we use and develop empathy to understand the user needs and also to stimulate creativity? So the design thinking approach, we are working together with people from Stanford, from the mechanical engineering, where they use design thinking for engineering, and we also apply this for the basic school, this kind of approach to develop technologies. And also, how can we apply and develop solutions when we find a problem, when we find some question that we want to investigate? How can we apply the technologies, both to understand the problem, and also if it's something that we want to solve, how can we develop new solutions, use mathematical strategies, and also using technology. Another point that it's important when we talk about STEM and STEM or STEAM in this case is team-based learning. How can we work together? This is really hard right now, but for example, in the engineering school, we have a discipline running right now where we work with design thinking, and we are developing solutions, and we are using team-based learning and each one in their own home. So we need to change all the technologies that we are using to stimulate the interaction of the students, for them to create solutions together. This is being very hard. And also how to use the labs remotely. So there is somebody that is inside the lab and the students are working together with this person. So this person is able to manufacture and the others cannot touch the object at that moment, but they are working together. Well, it's in the industry 4.0, we use the remote operating of machines. So we use this kind of concepts here also. And another important thing when we work with STEM is communication skills. And for us in Brazil, we are working together with the teachers using also English. When they are working on a project, they need to read and need to write and they need to develop videos explaining the projects for others, not only in Portuguese, but also English. So we are stimulating when we work with this. Also this kind of skills, communication skills, how to use not only tests, but using other types of expression. That's why the letter A is really important for us, both because of the communication skills, because they need to express themselves in different ways, and also in the design thinking approach, this empathy, using knowledge that we have in art area is really important for us. And well, the main objective is to, how can we prepare people to be more creative, more flexible, more collaborative? How can they be lifelong learners with focus to live in this 21st century? Of course, if we have different students in different levels, in different ages, not only ages, but sometimes different students, they have different rhythms to learn. So some students need more support, need more supervision. So what we think is to work in this approach, it's really important to select subjects where the students can work in real problems, but when they can start in simple problems and questions with more supervision, especially using tinkering approach where they explore the materials on a safe way, at school or at home, but on a safe way, with guided activities. And as they evolve, they can face more complex problems, real world issues given by the teachers or selected by themselves. So problems with more complexity, they will develop more autonomy and also more rigor for the scientific methodologies. Here is important also the aspect of open data, because to be able to develop more complex projects, both scientific or technological, if we can share data, information, we can reuse, remix, and so on, and develop more complex projects, but using the information that was shared by students and teachers. Here is important to view the teachers intentionally mediating this process of stimulating students' engagement and autonomy to investigate more complex questions and problems. So I put here this, that you are growing your knowledge, your skills, and so on. At Febrasi, I'm not going to show you examples, but since 2003, we use this kind of approach where the students must select problems and they must select questions that they want to investigate, and they need to develop a project individually or in teams. We are especially interested in teams, but we also accept when they develop individually, but of course they need to have a teacher that is supervising the work. And we have several videos, if you have interest, we can take a look at them after, where, for example, in the Featured Teacher Award videos, we see examples of teachers from different kind of situations, from different schools, from different regional contexts, both public and private teachers, and they tell us how they work in their schools, how they are developing this kind of strategy of STEM and STEAM at their own school. How can they develop real projects in their schools? And also in these links that I put for you, you can find examples of projects that were developed by the students. We do not put available the reports, the complete reports, but we have all this data with us for research if necessary. And in this material, we can see some schools have integrated this kind of approach in their curricula. So it's part of the curricula. They have spaces adapted, and also they have time to work in projects this way that I mentioned here. But we also have other examples where it's not integrated in the curricula. Sometimes it's an elective activity, or sometimes it's an initiative of a teacher that start with a very small group of students. And sometimes it is going to continue. Sometimes it can stop if this teacher moves to another place. And also we have examples where this kind of work is being done outside the schools, for example, in science and tech clubs, and even at home. Sometimes there are students that are doing this kind of thing at home because they do not have space and time, and the teachers engage in this type of approach inside schools. So the big challenge is to do large scale. So we are producing, and not only us, but there is a movement in Brazil where people are producing material, trying to stimulate and trying to share the experience of this kind of teachers, trying to show that it's possible to do this kind of thing in large scale, both with low tech and of course, if the students, let me go back, if they go to bigger complexity, they will need better infrastructure. Sometimes they do partnership with universities. Instead of having all the infrastructure, if they don't have, they can use on another school, or they can use on a university. I'm sorry. Well, but let's go to the reality that we have right now. We are in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, and in all states, I think people were not seeing what was going on in China, and only in March, after they declared the pandemic, our country started doing something, and not the same in all regions. Depending on the municipalities and the states, the reactions were a little bit different. But in all states, they declared social isolation, and they declared suspension of classes from public and private establishments at all levels. But the question that appeared is, for how long? If we do not have vaccines, if we do not have medicine treatment, if we do not have available testing and monitoring tools, for how long? Months, 1 semester, a year, more? So we still have this kind of question, because even if things go well, and if we have vaccine, for Brazil, we are a developing country. Maybe this vaccine, to reach the continental country that we have, it will take longer. So when and how can we go back to schools? It's a very big question that we have. And if we take a look at the United Nations put the object number 4 is education, to ensure inclusive and equitable and quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Well, we are trying to reach this, but now on a different context. Now we have this pandemic. How can we continue? The recommendation of United Nations is, well, how can we help the countries to mobilize resources and implementing innovative and context-appropriate solutions to provide education remotely, and in our case, on a continental country, leveraging high-tech, low-tech, and no-tech approaches. So there are many secretaries here in Brazil that are trying to do. There are some that are doing nothing. They are just waiting to see if a miracle will happen. But there are many that are trying to do different things. It's not, we do not have a general solution for all, nothing that, that is coming from Ministry of Education. Each secretary is trying to find ways. And also, how can we provide equitable solutions and universal access? Yeah, how ensure coordinate responses and avoid overlapping efforts. So these are recommendations that United Nations is giving to us, but it's very difficult in the implementation. And also, how can the government facilitate the return of students to school when they reopen to avoid an upsurge in dropout rates? It's another problem because there are students in different situations, and when they go back, how can we assure that many of them will not give up from what they have? And here in Brazil, the National Council of Education approved some guidelines for schools only in April. So everything started in March. In the middle of March, we had the suspension. And in April 28th, so at the end of the month of April, many secretaries had already started trying different situations, especially here in São Paulo. They were trying to find ways to continue the activities at home. But there are many problems that I'm going to express in the next slides. So here, the National Council of Education, they suggest to the states and municipalities that they find alternatives to minimize the need for face-to-face replacement of school days, because as they see that this will take more than 2 months, it will be really hard to compensate all these classes that are being lost when we can return to a face-to-face way. So in order to allow a flow of school activities to students and maintain it for the duration of this emergency. So they ask the states and municipalities to seek alternatives, and also they authorized that the education systems compute non-classroom activities to comply with the workload. This is important not only for the public schools, but also for the private schools, because for the private schools, to ask money from the parents, they need to continue the classes, because if not, the parents will say, oh, if you are not giving classes, we are going to stop paying you. So there was a very big pressure to authorize, to compute the non-classroom activities for the students. And also the National Council, they listed a number of non-face activities as a suggestion that they could use during this pandemic, to use digital media, video classes, virtual platforms, social networks, television or radio programs, educational material printed, and material that could be delivered to the parents or guardians. For example, here in São Paulo, they are using all of this. They started with the TV, because we have Cultura TV here, that they have two channels where they use, so they are transmitting video classes by the TV in order to reach, because it's open TV, to reach all the students. So they have some materials. In the beginning, they were not very popular. Now they are improving a little bit the material. And also they printed a lot of material because many students do not have access to internet resource. So they need, all of them need material. They did not send the material to the homes. The students and parents should go to the schools to get this material, because if not, they would spend lots of money in correo, I don't know, mailing, in the mailing system. So they ask the parents to go to the schools in different times to avoid many people together, but they're delivering this printed material. And also they are going to start this month to use an application in cellular phone, because many of the students do not have computers. So they will have the TV, the printed material, and they are going to have application in cellular phones where they are not going to pay the connectivity bills. So they are going to use this application as a special way to use this material. This is in São Paulo. In different places, they are developing similar strategies. But what is a big problem that we have? This pandemic is amplifying and giving greater visibility to the immense Brazilian inequalities. If we take a look at the Brazilian houses, 33% do not have access to the internet, and 58% do not have computers, even if they have a low band internet access, but they do not have computers. If we take a look at classes D and E, 59 do not have internet, and 91% do not have computers. And even worse, for some of them, children need to go to the school to have access to food. So what some schools are doing, they are preparing food packages, and the families go to the school and take the food to their homes. So there are many, many problems that we have. And at the same time, we have all this very difficult situation, but at the same time, several secretaries of education, schools and teachers are reinventing themselves and are doing a great work, but they are not large scale. We have very interesting initiatives, but that not cover all the students. Well, as you know, we are in a very big crisis here in Brazil in health, economic, and political. We have opportunities to change right now, because we need to do something right now. So we have opportunities to change, to experiment, to try new strategies, to try new tools. All the secretaries are really asking for help. They are asking help from companies, they are asking help from universities, they are asking help from everybody. And it's an opportunity to try to do a real digital inclusion and transformation. And, instead of giving nothing to the students that are not connected, it's a moment where we need to find ways to reach those that are excluded, because we have a pandemic now, but we need to use this pandemic to be able to face this very big digital divide that we have in our country. So we cannot do things in the same way now, because we have this pandemic, but even after the pandemic, nothing will be the same way, nothing. We hope that the vaccine comes and becomes available worldwide very soon, but we have the problem to return. When we return, how will be the reception? Are we going to have rotation?
May
Sorry?
I interrupt? I'd like to interrupt you just for a moment, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Because I'd like you to talk a little bit more about the technologies that we do have widely available, and what, if they have any strengths at all, or if we're just stuck with television particularly and cell phones, because neither, I mean, there's a long experience with educational television, which is not very promising, and learning on cell phones is extremely difficult, because the interaction is very difficult.
Yeah.
Is there any, do you have either any evidence on how those things work, or ideas about how they might be made to work better?
In large scale, we are going to have these answers in some months, what is working well, what's not working. Because, for example, in the Secretary of Education here at São Paulo State, they're applying this kind of, it's cross-media. They are not using only the TV. They are trying to combine broadcast TV together with the material printed and together with some interaction through the cell phones. I do not know in detail how is this application that they are going to use in the cell phones, but I can find this information and share with you soon. But they are trying to combine, but they still have this problem of reaching all the students. And also, how can they, for example, if they have students that are with different difficulties, they also have the problem with the teachers. The teachers are not prepared to work in this kind of situation. So everything is new. I don't know if they found somebody that have a good platforms to do that, because I know that we have several platforms available, but they need, for example, right now, we are with video, we are seeing each other, we are interacting, sometimes we have longer discussions, but for the majority of students, they cannot use this kind of technology. Even with my students at university, many of them, they turn off the video because they do not have enough internet connection to use video, because the parents are working, they are studying, sometimes they have one or two brothers and sisters at home. So it's really, really hard. Before the pandemic, what we had experienced and used with teachers and students is platforms such as Coursera and edX and things like that, where each of them go on a different rhythm, and not only using video, but using other materials. But I don't know any of the states that we have in Brazil. They are not prepared to use all this. They need to prepare the material. They were not prepared for that. The pandemic came, they were not ready. And now they are trying to engage teachers. They are producing videos, but many of them don't know how to do it. I think the good point is people is moving, trying to do things. So they are learning while they make mistakes. But another important thing that I think is good, in previous time, when we talked with people from education faculties, they didn't like the majority of technologies. They do not start using, even to know how this kind of technologies work, to say if it's good or not. So what we are seeing, it's something like a chaos right now. Everybody trying to use everything. And I hope it will accommodate. That's my last slide. That what we are going to face, I think, not only post-COVID, but when it's possible to return for a face-to-face, at least for some of the students. I think what we are going to have here in Brazil is a higher education gap, because we have some students that are excluded. We do not have time to include them. I don't believe we are going to be able to find a solution. So they are going to come back with a very, very big educational gap. But at the same time, we are pressuring the governments to do the digital inclusion programs that they promised to us a long time ago and didn't happen. So I think it's an opportunity for us to pressure. Another thing that I think is different right now, parents are being obliged to be closer, because especially for the better schools, the private and also the better public schools, the parents must be together with the students, because sometimes especially if the students are children, sometimes they cannot use everything alone for many reasons, technological reasons, and also to understand what are the teachers asking them to do. So parents are being closer. Many of the parents are being closer. Another thing that could happen here is a better perceptions and also better practices related to digital transformation and how to apply inside and outside school environment, because many teachers, not only in the basic school, but also in the university, they are being exposed to different technologies, using the cell phone, using the computer, using different tools, trying to see what is good, what is not. So at least they will start this process. Another thing that we are noticing is that the importance of arts and physical education, because a very huge concern right now is the emotional well-being. And they understand that it's not just that the way you work with the students is really important, especially when we are not face-to-face. How can we include other type of activities to improve the engagement and also the emotional well-being? And I think this will, I hope it will be maintained even when we go back to the, well, normal situation. That way we don't know what is going to be normal. And another thing is the community of teachers. We are noticing that the teachers, they want to do something. Many teachers want to do something, but they don't know how to do. So many of them, they know how to use social networks. So they are using social networks to create community of teachers that could share experiences how to work. So I think this is something that could be good. Another thing that we hope is to have schools better prepared to teach how to learn and to develop autonomy and solidarity. There is a very huge movement also related to solidarity here. For example, in our university, when we decide to continue the classes remotely, many of our students do not have computers at home, even students that study OSPI, and also they do not have connections. What we have done, we did a movement to donate or to emprestar. How is emprestar, Rodrigo?
To lend.
Lend, yes. To lend computers and also to give internet connection for the students to be able to continue. So this kind of solidarity, it's really important, because we need to stop everything for everybody. We need to continue, but we cannot let people back. We need to go together. And also we hope that we have a positive impact in teachers' professional development structures, because for a long time, we were talking with the universities that we need to change the way we are working with the teachers inside the university, licenciaturas. That it is important that the licenciaturas will be more interdisciplinary and also more digital, that they could include this kind of approach. Now, what can I do better inside schools and also outside schools using different technologies? So we we hope that after all this situation, we can have a professional development for teachers, and also not only the licenciaturas, because here in Brazil we do not have, as you have, for example, in some schools in US, the teachers college, the teaching as a profession, like medicine, like engineering. Here sometimes people study biology and they become teachers. They study math and they become teachers, but it was not their main objective in the beginning when they start studying that subject. And with all this difficulty that we are facing, I think the teachers' development and to see this teaching activity as a profession, and that we need to have something specific for them, and how to deal with this situation, that how can I prepare students, how can I motivate students, how can I work on a more interdisciplinary way, not focus only in one discipline and so on. I don't know. I talked more than 30 minutes. I'm sorry. If it was in Portuguese, I would be faster, but in English, I calculated.
No, thank you, Rosalie. That's great. There's a whole parallel discussion going on in the chat about all of the things that you have been talking about. So it's been very productive already. Rodrigo?
Yeah, just a minute. You're not seeing my screen yet. So, where is here? So thank you, Professor Rosalie. Obviously, there is an enormous overlap between my talk and the Professor Rosalie's talk, because we belong to the same school. We are people from technical fields like computer science and engineering, and we are exploring and doing education as a practice. So I'm starting from where, from my presentation in last year, here in our seminar, but I'm trying to advance the agenda. And this year, even before the coronavirus crisis, I was concerned about computers. And when I'm talking about computers, I'm talking about the price of computers and what is the government is doing to buy computers and to provide computers to school. And about data, just because with the current development in some governments in Brazil, they are giving data from students to our big tech companies like Google, Microsoft, and so on. And this process is being expanded by the governments right now because they need some kind of solutions to provide education and content during this crisis. And also, if we are thinking about governments, we are talking mainly about public policy. And public policy in a sense of public action. How governments are providing education technologies, and all these practical actions are represented in Brazil by public policies, and it means laws, regulations, funds, and how the government is doing these things. So I won't focus on this slide now, but one thing that I like to say is that when we are considering technology and education, we can divide two views of education technologies. Today in Brazil, we can see that we have a message that came from even from Bay Area, that we will have things like startups and futurist person talking about the future of technology, how technology can solve every problem that we have today, how our professions are working is changing, and how we are not prepared for this future. But there is another view, and this is the school that I belong to, and I believe Professor Rosalie also is talking about it, about problem-based learning, students producing technology, not just using technologies. It's the constructionist learning proposed by Papert, and we had the opportunity to talk about this several times during the seminar. And one thing that I really believe, with my view for computer science, my place of speech is that technology does not improve education, at least automatically. It does not mean that we don't need to provide technology. And when I say provide technology, I'm talking about hardware, software, and we need to address this problem. And I'm going to show today some of the solutions to these problems. So this table came from my presentation last year, where I was talking about do-it-yourself movement, accountability, but today I'm going to focus about open source solutions, free software and open hardware, open data, and about law, in a sense, to provide a better understanding of public policies by our governments. I'm trying to convince some governments in Brazil that we have solutions in our country, and that these solutions are being produced by our public universities, and these solutions could help to solve these problems that we are facing today in Brazilian education. So the first thing that I propose to everyone is that we needed to rethink our concept of what is a computer and what is an internet connection. Because we believe that computer is just this object that we have in front of us today, that it's a fancy laptop or a good desktop, but we have other platforms that can be used to practice technologies in schools. And when you talk about internet, and here I'm talking about the program Educação Conectada from the Ministry of Education in Brazil, we tend to think in internet in commercial terms. It's like we have internet in our houses in Brazil. We just pay monthly a bill to our network company, and we will have internet. But when you are talking about large public policies, and here I would say the numbers almost 50 million students and the 200,000 schools, we need to rethink our concepts about what is a computer and what is internet. And Professor Roseli talked about inequality. I'm not going to focus too much on it, but I'd like to show you this, this table where we can see that 26% of students in the North region, they didn't have access to internet in the last 3 months. And this 74% of students that are saying that they had access to internet, it means that in the less than 3 months. It means that today we are not providing enough access to internet, and I can assume that if they don't have access to internet, they don't have access to a desktop computer that is the better tool to provide technological experience in education. And another data that I'd like to show you is that 98% or 97% of students, at least, they have access to mobile phones. This data is driving our current public policy and the action of foundations and other actors in Brazil. They believe if 98% of students have access to a smartphone, I can just use this smartphone to provide classes or to provide some kind of knowledge. But the best scenario is here. The best scenario to provide a truly have a desktop or a laptop. And even United Nations states that the mobile phone is the second best experience on technology. So we have a problem. We need to provide computers, and I'm not talking about lending computers to students, but my point here is that government today, there is enough money to provide computers almost at least for 13 million students that don't have desktop or laptop computers on their house. This is a table from the last bidding processes, a licitação on government, that they were trying to buy computers to all regions in Brazil. But something that we can notice here are the prices, because we have a laptop for 4,000 reais. That it's too much to a laptop. So we are talking about very high prices when government is trying to buy these computers. But of course, this process was stopped by CGU, that is the controller entity from the federal government. And the government was ready to pay 3 billion reais to buy these very expensive computers. So the first thing that I'd like to agree with you, there is money, and this money is not being well planned, at least this, how the government is spending this money. And we have a lot of, I don't like the word, I don't like the word alternatives, because this kind of computers like Raspberry Pi and now Caninos Loucos from USP are small board computers, and the cost of these computers is far below the average price of other computers on the market. So we have, even I'm bringing this example from USP, because Caninos Loucos is a new platform being produced by Professor Roseli and Professor Marcelo Zufo laboratory in Brazil. So we have, even in Brazil today, we have options, and it's not necessary to buy computers paying 4,000 reais for just for each unity. And I had this experience before with Google Board, that it's a platform to open robotics, where in 2017, in 2018, I worked in SESI, Rio Grande do Sul. And after I left, I came to Stanford. They produced 300 new boards, because it's an open hardware, and they have access to the project of the board on the day one of the teacher training. So here we have an example of open hardware produced by an educational entity in Brazil. And another thing that we need to rethink in Brazil, it's about who is going to provide internet in our country. Today, we have the national network of the Rede Nacional de Ensino e Pesquisa, that this network is being developed at least in the last 30 years in Brazil to provide connection and other services to universities. I know that RNP is part of the Educação Conectada, but we have experience in Brazil to provide internet connection and networking to several types of educational institutions. And here I'm talking about we need to rethink internet, because internet is just a cable. If I bring a cable, optic fiber to a city, I can provide internet for several regions. And as you can see here, of course, the North region is a challenge to our country to provide internet, but we have a very important network that can be our main source and our main tool to provide internet to every school in the country. We don't have, I know that my screen has a lot of traces here, and I don't know how to erase them. And we don't have the exact data about what's the demand of internet to schools, but probably 50%, half of schools don't have any type of connection to internet nowadays in Brazil. But when I'm talking about public policy, I'm talking about a macro level policy, like the ministerial ordinance, it's a portaria from the Ministry of Science and Technology in Brazil, that this minister ordinance, they are establishing what are the priorities. And when we are talking about priorities, we are talking about what kind of projects the government will give money, we will give funds to research. And one thing that we can notice here is that today, education, humanities are not priorities for our current government. That's the problem that we are facing today in Brazil. So the Brazilian Society for the Progress of Science, that Professor Roseli is part of this society, is manifesting against this portaria, and saying that we can't create, of course, these priorities are very important, spatial, nuclear, cybernetics, border control, and so on. All these areas are very important, but we need to have education. We need to have people from humanities. We have to have even this understanding of how to create and how to deal with these priorities in our country. And about data privacy, as we can see, several governments, several municipalities in Brazil, state governments, today they are starting to use Google services mainly, and some of them Microsoft services. I won't have time to discuss further about data privacy here, but my point about free software also can attend or data security or data privacy by design, because the free software and open technologies by design, they can be we can check if they are respecting our privacy, what they are doing with our data, and it's impossible using Google for education and the big tech companies platforms. And I think my last point about public policies in Brazil, the problem is we have technologies, we are producing technologies, we have Caninos Locals, we have a very strong free software movement, we have a lot of experience from in state level, in municipal levels in Brazil, but we don't have an agency to decide and the policy in Brazil. That's why in several discussions with other colleagues, we need to create a sense of agency in Brazil. And this sense of agency, in my humble opinion, it belongs, who is responsible to take decisions, to form decisions, are the public universities in our country. And we have this model already happening on ENAP, the Escola Nacional de Administração, Public Administration National School, and we needed to create a public administration, of course, a technology education national school under the responsibility, under the umbrella of our public universities. And what we have today, we have several models. We have several curricula, like Brazilian Computer Society has a curriculum, is proposed a curriculum, CIEB is proposed another curriculum, several NGOs, foundations, code.org. We have a lot of curricula, but we don't have an instance, don't have an agency in Brazil to decide which curriculum is better for determined situations. And we have several models and even legacy projects like ProInfo. So what I'm doing today to help to solve these problems, at least in my state, I'm organizing with the higher education superintendents a technical residence program in innovation, and we are gonna deal with all these problems that we are talking here today. And in order to try to provide the state of Paraná a better understanding, and our strategy here is to have people thinking about how to provide better services using technologies. And these are the areas that we are going to work: digital transformation, public policy, electronic government, and so on. This work has the participation of Professor Márcio Fernandes from Unicentro. He is from a public university in the countryside of Paraná. And my classes on this residence program are starting to go online. This program was planned to start in March, face-to-face learning, but now we are talking about moving online because I think you don't have a choice. And they've identified my talks to think about. I think what we are trying to do here is to find new ways to provide educational technologies. That's why I say that we need to change our minds. And when I talk about change our minds, it means that we need to change our public policy to get the ideas and to get resources from the open source movement, open hardware and free software movement. And I'd like to thank a lot Lívia, Fábio Campos, and Paulo Blickstein. We have weekly discussions about all these problems that we are talking here today. And also thanks Professor David Plank that is teaching a lot about public policy and how to think strategically about how to solve big problems in Brazil. And thank you all for your attention. Sorry to be too quick, but I think we have only 15 minutes to discuss, and I'm happy to hear your questions and ideas.